Welcome back. I know it's been a while, a few months, since my last long form video. I've posted a few shorts here and there, and that's for a lot of different reasons. One, I was getting used to new ADHD medication because last year I was diagnosed with ADHD and I was also diagnosed as autistic at 42, which is a lot to take in. But I've been learning a lot about myself since then. And I've learned how that affects all aspects of my life because it is a way that your brain is wired. And I'm learning how that explains a lot about my life and about how I've reacted to things. Now, in the past few years, I've also gotten into paranormal investigation, and being autistic and having ADHD does also inform how I participate in paranormal investigations. And I'm learning that there are accommodations that I need to make the investigations fun and fulfilling for not only myself, but for the rest of the people that I'm investigating with. Now, back in April, I went up to Villisca, Iowa to investigate the axe murder house up there. In 1912, the Moore family and two neighbor girls who were visiting were brutally murdered in the middle of the night with an axe. And the person was never caught. Lots of suspects, but no one really knows who did it. The home, subsequently, is known for being incredibly haunted. And my friend Lexi asked a few of her Instagram friends if we wanted to go up there and do an investigation. I knew Lexi, and I'd spoken to these other people online before, but I didn't actually know them in person. So I was excited to go up there and investigate this place that was far away from where I live. But at the same time, I was also really nervous because it's far away from where I live. So I started to make a list of accommodations that I could make for myself to make this trip fun. Now, since this trip went really well, we've been discussing visiting other places and doing more paranormal investigations. And I'm also really looking forward to that. I had a great time with them. There will be a video about the Villisca, Iowa investigation at some point when I can get all my thoughts together because they're still kind of a jumbled mess. But I realized after the investigation that there were more accommodations that I just hadn't thought about that I would need. And I decided to go online to see if any other neurodivergent paranormal investigators had compiled a list of accommodations that they make for themselves or that they ask certain places to have prepared for them. And I couldn't find anything. I found a whole bunch of blog posts and videos talking about why it's important to have somebody who's neurodivergent on your paranormal investigation team, but I couldn't find anything with accommodations. And while I agree that you should have an eclectic and diverse paranormal investigation team, you also have to remember that when you have diversity on your team, that certain people need certain things. And in the case of neurodivergent people, we do need certain accommodations. So I'm getting the ball rolling. If you're neurodivergent and you also do paranormal investigations, feel free to make your own video or add in the comments some accommodations that maybe I didn't cover. But so far, I've come up with a list of 14 different things. And we're gonna get through at least half of them on this video. There will be a second part later. Accommodation number one actually comes from my friend, Rebecca the Ghost Guide. She recommended calling places ahead of time to find out about the conditions. What is the temperature going to be like inside the building? Is there gonna be heat or air conditioning available? Do certain rooms echo? Will there also be a room set aside where you can go to decompress for a little bit, kind of like a base camp? Some venues have those, not all of them do. But knowing all of that ahead of time helps you mentally prepare and make adjustments to the things that you bring with you. Accommodation number two, check weather conditions. Some of us have sensitivities to temperatures. Some of us do terribly in extreme cold or extreme heat. So especially if the venue doesn't have heating or air conditioning, knowing what the weather's going to be like is really important when you're planning a paranormal investigation. Sometimes you might have to adjust the time of year that you go do an investigation because the weather conditions just aren't accommodating to us. And in the middle of an investigation, we might get overwhelmed by the fact that we are freezing cold and we can't think of anything else. And it feels like our mouth and our brain are frozen. Or maybe it's too hot and you feel like your brain has melted and you just can't think of anything at all. It is summer right now, and I am definitely in that mode. Brain, she no function after a while. If you're wondering how to check for what the weather conditions are, you can look up an online almanac, Google the location you're looking for and what the weather was like at this specific time the year before, and get an idea. Let's say I'm going to investigate the Villisca murder house again. What I did this time was I looked up an online almanac to see what the weather would be like in April, mid-April, but for 2023 instead of this year. That gave me an idea of what kind of temperatures to expect, and that way I knew what clothing to pack. Number 3, look up the place you're going to investigate on Google Street View. You can look up the address for the place you're going to investigate depending on where you're going. In some cases that doesn't work, but in a lot of cases, yes, you can look up the Google Street View using their address and get an idea of what the area looks like, what the building looks like, at least from the exterior. And if you're trying to get an idea of what the place looks like inside, especially if it's a popular place that a lot of other people have investigated, you can look up videos online. When we were getting ready for Villisca, since it, again, was so far away from my home, and I knew I couldn't just run back home to get stuff if I needed it, I looked up a bunch of videos on YouTube from people who had been in the house and filmed what the house looked like, so I could get an idea of what I needed to bring to prepare. Also, for some of us, having a visual of what you're going into helps to reduce a lot of stress. We know what the street looks like. We know what the building looks like. We know what the temperature is going to be inside the building, roughly. So just knowing that can help a lot when we're preparing for an investigation. Number 4, dress for comfort. I know on this paranormal investigation shows, people are wearing like all black, or they all have the same shirt. And that's great for them. But if I'm doing an investigation, especially an overnight investigation, I want to be as comfortable as humanly possible. I am not dressing to look cute. I am not dressing to be TV ready. I just want to be comfortable and not have to worry about clothing while I'm doing an investigation. For neurodivergent people, uncomfortable clothing can make everything else go out of our heads because all we can feel is the zipper on our jeans. And that's it. That's all we can concentrate on. And that will immediately take us out mentally of a situation. So knowing what the temperature is going to be like and being able to pack for that helps a lot. I love people who have a certain aesthetic when they go to do paranormal investigations. Love that for them. But for someone like me, being able to just dress comfortably in very comfy pants and a million different sweatshirts helps a lot, because I was warm, I was comfortable, and I could just concentrate on the investigation rather than how my clothes felt. Another thing that I did when we were up in Villisca is, instead of wearing my sneakers all night, I actually brought my little bat slippers to change into while we were walking around the house. I felt like they were so much more comfortable, and I found them to be a lot warmer than my tennis shoes. So they also help keep my feet warm at the same time. Another thing for us to keep in mind during investigations is the fact that there will be a lot of noise, a lot of different types of noises as well. Some places where they do paranormal investigations, there are rooms that echo a lot, and especially when you're trying to talk to people you're investigating with and also use equipment, you're also dealing with this echo. And for neurodivergent people, that can be incredibly overwhelming. So remember to bring noise canceling headphones or the little loop earplugs, or just regular earplugs. Whatever works for you is fine. But just keep that in mind when you're preparing for an investigation. And the noise thing kind of flows into my next point. Some paranormal investigation tools also can be incredibly overstimulating. I hate spirit boxes. I hate them. I hate all the staticky noise that they make. I can deal with it for a little bit, but if I'm having to sit there and listen to it for an extended period of time, it's too much for me.
Flames on the side of my face.
Definitely having loop earplugs on the last investigation would have helped a lot with that, but I didn't think of that at the time, so I didn't bring mine. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of paranormal investigations, and that would mean sorting through a lot of video and audio files dealing with spirit box stuff, there are similar tools you can use that don't have all the same static in the background. For anyone who's not aware of what a spirit box is essentially a broken radio. It scans through radio stations very quickly. And the idea is that spirits are able to kind of grab words and speak through the spirit box. But because it's a broken radio, you've got a lot of static in the background. And every once in a while you catch some words or sentences. Again, that can get really overwhelming. There are some alternatives to those. One is the Necrophonic app. That is what I use a lot. It is a word generator app available for iPhones and iPads. I believe it's also available for Android. I use this all the time. I've got it downloaded on my iPad. We used it in Villisca. I've used it at a few other investigations, and I've found it to be incredibly useful without being completely overwhelming. Another tool that one of my friends uses is the Phasma box. That is something you can download on your laptop. That is not available for iPhone or Android, unfortunately. That would be great if they had those available. But a Phasma box is another word generator program that doesn't have all the crazy static in the background. My friend Theron has had really good luck with their Phasma box. There are also things called ghost boxes, which are similar to spirit boxes, but they don't have all the static in the background. Some of them also come with screens and they will pop the words up for you, which is great for some people who have auditory processing issues, because for those of us who have those issues, you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, did they say this or did they say this other thing? But with the ghost box, they have a screen and it'll just pop the words up for you, so you don't even have to guess what it's saying. You can also look at more old school tools. I really like my pendulum and pendulum board. That's not for everybody though. Some people really like the little dowsing rods. I personally don't like those, but that's me. And if it works for you, it works for you. Have fun. That's the important thing, is finding tools that actually work for you. And the last point I'm gonna make today is to remember to bring in STEM toys. Of course, since you're doing an investigation, it means a lot of recording. You don't want anything that's gonna make a lot of noise. One of my favorite STEM toys is my little spinner ring. It is very quiet. I use it all the time, and most of the time people don't seem to notice that I'm using it. But it's here and I can use it whenever I need it, which is great. But some of us like larger things. There is STEM putty, or like little squeezy STEM toys that you can use. Again, I would just recommend anything that doesn't make noise, because that's gonna get picked up on recording equipment, whether you're doing video or audio recording, and you don't have to constantly go, that's a STEM toy that you heard right there. So look for something that's quieter. You can also bring in your Squishmallow if needed. I never travel without a Squishmallow. I always have a Squishmallow with me. And I have varying sizes. I've got this big old spider. I also have my little ghosty, Gracie. And I have a few others. So if having something nice and soft to hold on to while you're investigating would be beneficial to you, you've got various sizes of those to choose from. The important thing to remember about all of this is that just because you're neurodivergent doesn't mean you can't do these things. Are there challenges to doing a paranormal investigation, especially an overnight paranormal investigation as a neurodivergent person? Yes, absolutely. But the important thing to remember is that you can still do it. Does it take us a few extra steps to do some of the things that neurotypical people do? Sure. But we can still do these things and we can still have fun doing these things. There is a place for us at the paranormal investigation table. So I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this series. Part 2 will be up next week. And if you have anything to add to this conversation, if you thought of something that I didn't get to, please add it in the comments. Or if you are creative and like to make your own video, go for it. This was just to get the conversation started. This is not a be-all, end-all list. I'm still figuring stuff out as I go along because, again, I was just recently diagnosed. So I'm still trying to figure out what works for me. So this is a journey, and I'm glad that we're all here, a part of it.